Hello, today is September 27th, 2020, and the time is 8:48 a.m. Now, a couple of videos back, I talk about an emergency surgery that I was supposed to have the other day after being rushed to the hospital. And I explain basically, I have nothing left after the city, this province had completely destroyed my life because of whistleblowing on police, judicial, and political corruption. And really, when you think about it, it boils down to quality versus quantity. And a lot of people have been socially conditioned to accept quantity. More is better. And that's a whole different discussion. Now, I know that this province is aware of certain kinds of sexual abuse, the provincial health care. And when I compound that to the fact how everywhere medical professionals are promoting this mask outbreak cure hoax, you really have to wonder how much can the healthcare profession be trusted. Times have changed. Perhaps maybe at one time you could have trusted them, but times have changed. The whole world has changed. The civilization has changed, and not for the good. And when we see medical professionals say, a lot of them are posting articles and videos and everything confirming that this whole thing is nonsense. And then we have conflicting stories from so-called government officials saying yes, no, which ties into this whole AI thing that I talked about in a previous video, where if you're an anti-mask, so we have these medical professionals openly coming out saying this whole thing is nonsense. And people who specialize in these fields dealing with microorganisms or whatever, they're saying, yeah, this is all wrong. And then when you see, for example, nurses doing videos and saying, yeah, this whole thing is, there's something wrong, it's not right, and there's more to it, and they're getting into a lot of detail. And when you actually go to these medical facilities, and when you see staff amongst themselves hanging around, not wearing a mask, for example, until a patient comes into their view, then they put the mask on, you really got to wonder. So there's something else to consider for myself, is why would I trust any of these people with a life or death surgery when all this other nonsense I'm very much aware of? I hear a lot about free health care in Canada. And it was actually because I don't have health care, and it was the other day it was being promoted to me, well, it's free, why wouldn't you? And I said, I don't care about free. And I've mentioned around the mid-2000s that I did briefly walk with the elite of the world. And I learned things a lot of people, most people, only deem as conspiracies or whatever. I've shared a few things with regards to the medical side of what I know, coming right from the very top. And one of the things about free health care was I was shown on a piece of paper, normal piece of paper, what healthcare, free healthcare is. So when you go for a physical, when they're checking things out, they had a list that was in the top left corner. I don't know, maybe 10, 15 things. And when you go for a normal physical, that's what they test you for. And one of the another person had mentioned, say, through what they call the presidential healthcare system. It has nothing to do with being a president or a prime minister, but that's the level I would assume that they would all have, and others, elites. I think it was like a page and a half, normal print, when they go for a physical. And they told me that they can find anything before it's something and fix it before the person even knows what's going on. That's what they told me. But most people, the majority of the people, don't get that. And you don't get that with free healthcare. Free healthcare provides, as my descriptive, barely the basics. But yeah, this is what I learned. And I learned to keep my mouth shut about a lot of these things that I know. So in today's world, we have this major worldwide hoax going on, and people are paranoid. And when you have people, like I had somebody told me a few days ago about this whole mask nonsense, they don't want to get sick. Well, you know something? If you're that afraid of getting sick or even dying, stay home. Or just go somewhere. I don't care. I've mentioned in other videos about the times that I was dead. I survived abortion. Apparently it took doctors 45 minutes to resuscitate me when I was born. That's how I came into this world. I came into this world dead. And here I am. And this explains a lot of woo-woo, what I call woo-woo, and spiritual stuff. And they're two different things in my life. And I drowned twice. And the second time I drowned, it was overseas. I was under the water. I'm somewhere around 40 minutes. The people, everyone that was around, trying to look for me, I guess at that point just gave up. And some of them were still in the water, and I remember I bobbed out of the water like a cork. And everyone thought they saw a ghost. And I did have an experience there, and I talk about this in a couple of other videos. So I guess my point with that is, I know there's something beyond here. And a lot of atheists will deny that. And, where's the evidence? Well, if you don't want to accept someone's first-hand account, and it's not like you can pick up a souvenir while you're on the other side, right? Then, whatever. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything, accept it or not. And when we see what's going on in the world with all this fear-mongering, with getting sick and dying, and a lot of people are defaulting to the Georgia Guidestones. And I did do a video on the Georgia Guidestones explaining that the common acceptance of what people have interpreted it to mean is wrong. But for the sake of argument, if it's right, can anyone not understand why, for example, the ruling class would want to do something like that when you look at the majority of the population, most people, how they are? I had seen a video a long time ago, a year ago, and I came across it again, and I watched it again, and it's by the YouTuber Blackpilled. I believe his name is Devin Stack. Now, I'm not endorsing channels or anything else, but I will mention. And this one particular video was about, he kind of critiques, actually he's a very interesting person to know, because he shares his background and how he critiques, say, movies and stuff. And he was talking about a movie called Wag the Dog. And in the beginning opening credits of the movie Wag the Dog, I guess in print, the question was, why do dogs wag their tail? And the answer was something to the effect of, because dogs are smarter than their tail. And then when you look at, there's a second part to it with regards to the tail wagging the dog, implying that the tail is smarter than the dog. And the whole idea of that has a meaning that whoever's smarter controls the rest. So the tail of the dog being the smaller part of the animal as a whole, wagging the dog would imply that the smaller part is controlling the bigger part. And when you apply that to civilization, society, you have the ruling class who are controlling the rest, manipulating, and people just go along with it. Even the people who, for example, are complying with the whole mask nonsense, they're conformists. It doesn't matter whether you actually accept it or not, the false narrative about this whole thing. All that matters is that you're conforming. You can mumble all you want about, this is all nonsense, but at the end of the day, who cares? So you have a small group of people controlling the rest. One of the things in my, I don't like using the word near-death experience, the term near-death experiences, because either you're dead or you're not. If you're near it, you're not dead. And I know there's been my personal experiences, there's no way that I was alive. And one of the things that was made known to me is that most are empty shells. And I could never fully understand. I understood, but how? Okay? Because we're all told that, every human being is, not an empty shell. And then when you start realizing, and I'm going to just mention scripture real briefly, so if you're not into it, just plug your ears for the next 30 seconds. But when you look at Genesis 1 and 2, and how they actually talk about two different human creation stories, then it makes sense. The empty shells, Genesis 1. Genesis 2, not the empty shells. So this is the world that we live in, and you have, I've described what I mean when I say the lesser, the human gene pool, which you can also attribute to the empty shells. And what that is are the people who, for example, lack critical thinking skills, an extensive knowledge base, and they cannot separate their emotions when forming conclusions. And they've become the majority. I've said this. This is all part of the cycles of civilization. And just to reiterate, we are in the late stage of the last stage of civilization, the age of decadence, and we repeat history because history is forgotten either by chance or design. This is where we are today. We're at the late stage. We are in the death throes, no pun intended, of the civilization. And that's why a lot of what's being imposed on the people for example, different types of hoaxes are just more and more being obvious, because it's like, yeah, we're near the end here, so who really cares? And this is where we're at. And I've talked about the different signs of this point in civilization, the different groups that rise in a specific order. And I'm not belittling or have anything against any of these groups. I'm just simply saying this is what we see. Now, let me just stop there for a second. There comes a point where there's certain groups that start to rise that, yeah, I do take issue with it. And that gets into the normalization of pedophilia and real pedophiles, like with prepubescent children. The whole teen thing, that's a different topic, and I'm not saying I endorse that at all. It's just, that's something else. But let's just encompass everything for the sake of argument. So we have the rise of that, the acceptance of that, and bestiality, the acceptance of that in society, and cannibalism, the acceptance of that in society. These are the very last signs of this point in civilization. And the first half I do talk about in other videos, and it really triggers people because people have been so socially conditioned, and a lot of that gets misunderstood either by chance or design, because this just rubs people wrong. But I just sharing the facts. I don't share my personal opinions, beliefs, other than pineapple on pizza. I will, and I have shared my position on pineapple on pizza. But I don't share my opinions, theories, beliefs, or anything like that. I share the facts that I know. And when I put them together, I show how they fit. And a lot of times what you find is people, when they're personally impacted or they're emotion-based, they resort to name-calling and all this other nonsense because they don't have anything else. And that is not being able to separate emotions when making conclusions. So when we have the majority of the population as they are, and I'm not belittling the empty shells or the lessor, the human gene pool as I described, or anything, or any group, but the whole world's just chaos. What's there really to look forward to? Where's the quality? Yeah, quantity of life, but there's no quality anymore. It's everything's only going to get a lot worse. So in this particular time, who do you trust? You can't trust anyone, really, because, and I mentioned this with in the anti-mask groups, how even within, whether it be the anti-maskers or the maskers, within each group there's divisions lurking. And this is where human beings, civilization, becomes a snake that eats its own tail. A snake that eats its own tail dies by itself. So, aside from my whole life, my future, everything destroyed by the city, who almost killed me, literally, shooting me dead, in this province that supports the injustice and everything else. And what I know And I've shared other stories with regards to this provincial health care and why I really fought hard to have to cancel it. And it really had to do with false information about me on their database and how I was ill-treated. Now, I'm not saying at all that this hospital that I was at this last time ill-treated me. No. They were good. Like, there was no issues at that. And I really understand when they were trying to say, listen, you need this surgery. It's, could be fatal if I don't. There's no ill treatment. There's nothing bad I can say. But this has to do with a couple other places, and that's all I'm going to say. But yeah, who do you trust? Well, as I said a couple videos back, there's people in this city, the police, the courts, and the politics all I can just do is say, be patient and wait. You'll get what you want. Anyway, just wanted to share this video. It's much longer than what I was anticipating, but I don't know where I'm at in time. But thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.